All right, so are you ready to dive into some seriously spooky stuff? We're talking haunted houses, and not just any haunted houses, but the ones that give you chills just thinking about them.
The kind of places that make you wonder if maybe, just maybe, there's more to this world than meets the eye.
Exactly. We're going deep with Travel Plus Leisure's 12 Most Haunted Houses in America article.
Oh, I know this one. Full of those creepy stories that are perfect for late night reading, right?
You got it. But we're going beyond just the ghost stories. We're going to uncover the history, the real life events, maybe even a bit of psychology.
Because sometimes the truth behind the hauntings is even more fascinating than the ghosts themselves.
First stop, the Whaley House Museum in California. Now, get this, it's one of the few places officially declared haunted by the U.S. government.
No way, really? By the
Yeah.
government?
Back in the 1960s, the Commerce Department, of all things, said it was haunted.
Okay, so now I have to know more. What makes it so special?
Well, the story goes that a guy named Yankee Jim Robinson was hanged right where the house stands today.
Whoa, that's heavy. And people report hearing his footsteps. Makes you think about how a place can hold on to those kinds of events.
Right. Like, are those footsteps just our imaginations, or could it be something else? Plus, the Whaley family themselves experienced some pretty tragic stuff in that house.
Adding even more layers to the whole thing. It's like how much is just stories and how much could be,
Yeah.
something we can't explain.
All right, let's trade sunny California for the city that never sleeps, New York City. We're heading to Greenwich Village, to a place with a pretty ominous nickname, House of Death.
House of Death. Yikes. That doesn't sound very welcoming.
Not exactly, but get this, it's said to have a whopping 22 ghosts.
22.
Why?
Seriously. That seems a little excessive, doesn't it?
Yeah, it makes you wonder if maybe the spooky reputation is feeding itself.
Right, like a ghost story snowball effect.
But maybe there's something about Greenwich Village, too. It's seen so much history, so many lives lived and lost. Maybe those energies stick around.
And don't forget, Mark Twain lived there.
No kidding.
Yep. Some even say his ghost is among the 22. I mean, at what point does a place just become overloaded with stories?
Good question. Okay, ready for a change of pace. We're heading back to California, but this time it's to the Winchester Mystery House. Picture this. Endless rooms, staircases that lead to nowhere, doors that open to walls.
Oh, I've heard of this one. The Winchester rifle heiress, right?
Yeah.
Built the house to appease the ghosts of all those killed by her family's guns.
Yeah, that's the legend. But you're the architecture buff. What's your take?
Well, let's just say Sarah Winchester was a woman of unique tastes.
Unique is one way to put it.
Was she truly haunted? Or was she just incredibly wealthy and decided to express herself in, shall we say, an unconventional way?
That's a great point. And there's actually a theory that she just loved building. The 99% Invisible podcast even did an episode on it.
That flips the whole narrative, doesn't it? From a haunted widow to maybe like an early feminist architect breaking all the rules.
Yeah. Maybe we should do a deep dive on that sometime. Okay, let's get serious for a moment. We're going to the Villisca Axe Murder House in Iowa. In 1912, an entire family, plus 2 friends, were murdered there. And it remains unsolved to this day.
That's awful. What makes Villisca so different is that it seems to be more about the victims than the ghost itself.
It's like this lingering sense that they're searching for some sort of justice after all this time.
It really taps into that fear we have that even in death, some things are just never resolved. And here's the kicker. You can actually spend the night there.
No way, you're kidding, right? I don't think I could handle that. Knowing what happened there, the mystery is still unsolved. It feels almost disrespectful, even if it's not intended that way.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It raises some interesting ethical questions, doesn't it? Is it morbid curiosity or a way to connect with the past?
Maybe a bit of both. Okay, from an unsolved mystery to a case that everyone seems to have an opinion on, the Lizzie Borden house. You know, the one with the rhyme. Axed her parents, got acquitted, everyone thinks they know the story.
But what's really fascinating about the Lizzie Borden case is the psychology of it all. Lizzie was found not guilty, yet everyone still seems convinced she did it.
It's like the gruesome nature of it all just stuck with people.
Maybe it's that, or maybe it's because she was a woman who defied the expectations of her time.
And now it's a bed and breakfast? With ghost scams? Can you believe it? Part of me is terrified, but the other part is kind of curious.
It's like we're all trying to solve this century-old mystery ourselves. The house becomes this tangible connection to the past.
All right, last one for now, and it's a doozy. The Bell Witch Cave in Tennessee. We're not just talking about your typical ghost sightings here. We're talking physical attacks, voices tormenting an entire family.
This one's different, right? It's not just a random ghost. The legend says it's the spirit of a vengeful neighbor named Kate Batts.
Seriously.
Yep. Imagine having a neighbor so angry they come back to haunt you.
Makes those neighborhood disputes seem a little less scary, huh?
Yeah. Right. But the craziest part is there are tons of eyewitness accounts from back then, even historical documents. It's not just some campfire story. People were genuinely terrified of this thing.
It really makes you question that whole seeing is believing thing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
When so many people experience the same unexplained phenomena, it makes you think twice. So we've gone from mysterious footsteps to possible vengeful spirits.
What could possibly be next on this haunted house tour?
Well, let's just say we're heading to a place that even presidents are afraid of. All right, so we're back and ready for more creepy adventures.
You ready to leave that spooky cave behind?
Yeah, let's get out of there. Where are we headed next?
Well, from a Tennessee cave, we're going to the White House.
Wait, what? The White House is haunted. You're telling me even presidents have to deal with ghosts?
Apparently so. There are all sorts of stories, and some of them come from pretty credible sources. Like, did you know that President Reagan mentioned his dog barking at things that weren't there?
I did not know that. That's actually kind of funny. The first dog on Ghost Patrol.
Right. But it also makes you think, you know, if animals can sense this stuff, maybe there's more to it than we realize.
Yeah, good point. It's not just dogs either. Reagan's daughter, Maureen, said she saw a figure in the Lincoln bedroom.
Oh, wow, that's got to be one of the most iconic ghost sightings ever. The Lincoln ghost.
You know, you mentioned in your notes that you find the Lincoln ghost particularly fascinating. Why is that?
Well, I mean, think about it. He's such a huge figure in American history. His presidency was so full of turmoil and conflict.
Right, like maybe there was some unfinished business.
Maybe that weight of history could make anyone stick around, you know?
Yeah, I see that. And get this, Winston Churchill said he saw Lincoln's ghost too, right after he got out of the bathtub.
Oh, no. That's hilarious. Imagine being Winston Churchill, stark naked, and suddenly you see Abraham Lincoln.
Talk about a presidential encounter. Okay, enough presidential hauntings. Let's switch gears again. This time, we're dealing with a demon disguised as a little girl.
Oh, yeah. The Sally house in Kansas. This one is definitely creepy.
It's like tapping into some primal fear, right? The idea of something evil hiding in plain sight.
Absolutely. And the reports from this house are intense. Scratches, burns, things moving on their own. This isn't just your typical spooky noises.
It's more like a full-on haunting, right? In your notes, you talked about being interested in cases that have evidence beyond just personal stories.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
What do you make of the physical marks that people report at the Sally house?
Well, if it was just stories, you could maybe explain it away. But physical evidence, that's hard to ignore. It makes you wonder what's really going on there.
It blurs that line between, like, the psychological and the supernatural, doesn't it?
It really does. I mean, is it possible for extreme fear or stress to manifest physically? Or is there actually something supernatural at play? Tough questions.
Okay, enough demons for now. Let's move on from a possibly possessed little girl to a place with a super dark history, Franklin Castle in Ohio.
Oh, Franklin Castle. That place has got a reputation, and not just for ghosts.
The builder, Hannes Tiedemann, had a reputation for being cruel. And then there are all these deaths in his family. His daughter, his mother, more children, his wife. It's a lot of tragedy for one family.
Yeah. It makes you wonder if the house itself absorbed all that negative energy.
I mean, maybe. And then to make things even creepier, human bones were found inside the walls.
That's awful.
Yeah.
You know, even if none of the ghost stories are true, the real history of that place is enough to make anyone uneasy.
For sure. It makes you think about how the past can shape how we see a place. Okay, let's go from a super creepy castle to something a little more beautiful. We're off to Biltmore in North Carolina.
Biltmore is interesting, right? It's this grand, luxurious estate. You wouldn't exactly expect it to be haunted.
Right, but it's got its share of stories. Some visitors say they've felt a presence or heard a woman's voice calling out a name.
I think that contrast is what makes it so interesting. It's like tragedy and beauty can exist in the same place, you know?
Yeah, totally. And it's those unexpected hauntings that really get to you. They make you question what you think you know about haunted places. Speaking of unexpected, we're going to a place that's practically a modern-day legend, the Conjuring House in Rhode Island.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of this one.
This is where the movie The Conjuring got its inspiration, you know.
It was a real family, and the things they went through, it's terrifying. Voices, objects moving, Physical attacks, the whole 9 yards.
And they were investigated by Ed and Lorraine Warren, probably the most famous paranormal investigators ever.
That's right. You've done quite a bit of research on the Warrens, haven't you?
Yeah, I find them super fascinating.
What do you think about their involvement with the house? Did it make the case more credible, or did it just add to the hype?
It's hard to say. They were definitely controversial. Some people thought they were the real deal. Others thought they were just good at self-promotion.
True. But you have to admit they did a lot to bring the paranormal into the mainstream.
They did. And now the house is a huge tourist destination. People can tour it and even spend the night there.
I wonder what the Perrin family would think about that.
Right. Is it a way to honor their story, or is it just exploiting their suffering? It's a tough question.
Okay, ready for our last stop on this part of the tour. We're leaving modern-day horror behind and heading into the world of literature.
Ooh, I like the sound of that. Where are we going?
The House of the Seven Gables in Salem, Massachusetts.
No way. Nathaniel Hawthorne's house. The book was so creepy. I love Hawthorne, but man, that story gave me the chills.
It's amazing to think that the house itself might have influenced Hawthorne's writing.
Right. It's like this weird blend of fiction and reality.
Exactly. And then on top of the literary connection, you've got actual ghost stories associated with the house.
Like what?
Well, there are reports of people seeing a man climbing the secret staircase or a young boy playing in the attic.
I wonder if Hawthorne's ghost hangs out there too, watching people read his books. That would be pretty meta.
It's like the stories themselves have become part of the haunting.
The House of the Seven Gables really shows how history, literature, and the power of stories all come together in these haunted places.
It reminds us that sometimes the most fascinating hauntings are the ones that intertwine with art and our own imaginations.
Wow, we've covered some seriously spooky ground on this deep dive.
From ghosts to demons to just plain creepy history, America's got it all.
It's amazing, right? You know, after all that, there's one place I keep thinking about. That Winchester Mystery House.
Oh, yeah. What is it about that one that keeps coming back to you?
It's not just the ghosts, it's the house itself, you know? It just seems so bizarre. All those rooms, the staircases to nowhere.
It's like a real-life labyrinth, isn't it?
Exactly, like some kind of architectural puzzle.
Well, you always have been fascinated by things that defy logic. And the Winchester Mystery House definitely fits that bill, right? 160 rooms, 47 fireplaces, doors that open onto walls.
It's crazy. It's almost like Sarah Winchester was building her own little world, totally separate from reality.
Maybe that's exactly what she's doing.
Yeah, maybe. The legend says she built it all to confuse the ghosts, but I honestly think there's more to it than that.
I think you might be right.
You've researched so many eccentric people throughout history. What do you think was going on with Sarah Winchester?
It's tempting to just say, oh, she was eccentric or she was just grieving, but I think there was a lot more to her than that.
Right. Like, try to imagine the pressure of being the Winchester rifle heiress. All those expectations, all that money.
Exactly. Maybe all that building was her way of coping, her way of controlling something in a world that probably felt pretty chaotic.
Like she was creating her own rules, her own escape.
And the fact that she kept building for 38 years nonstop.
Yeah.
That's a level of dedication most of us can't even fathom.
You know, it makes you wonder what was going through her head as she designed all those crazy features, those dead ends, those secret passageways. Was it fear, grief, or something else entirely?
Maybe a bit of everything. You know, you've mentioned before how much architecture can affect us psychologically. What do you think it would be like to live in a place like that?
Oh, man. I can't even imagine. I feel like I'd be constantly on edge, always looking over my shoulder.
Yeah, that feeling of being watched,
Yeah.
always wondering what's around the next corner.
Yeah.
It would mess with your head for sure.
And that kind of brings us back to the core of what we've been talking about this whole time, doesn't it? Why are we so fascinated by these places?
Why do we seek out the spooky, the unexplained?
Yeah. Is it the thrill, the history, the mystery?
I think it's a little bit of everything. We crave those mysteries, those glimpses into the unknown.
And these haunted houses with all their stories and secrets, they give us that, don't they?
They sure do. So as we wrap up this deep dive into America's Most Haunted, I have to ask, what's the one thing that really stuck with you?
What gave you chills? What made you think? What will you keep thinking about long after this episode is over?
Whatever it is, I hope this conversation has sparked your curiosity.
And reminded you that even in a world that seems so explained, there are still mysteries lurking around every corner.
So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and remember,